You're fucking right. He deserves it. Paul Heyman, as a wrestling fan, that was a guy that I came across when he had a cell phone, a brick cell phone, and he managed some of the greatest professional wrestlers as a kid I had ever seen. Guys like Rick Rude, guys like Arn Anderson, guys like Steve Austin. He was a trailblazer. When he was on commentary, he oozed of Bobby Heenan to me. He was like a callback. And then as he became a manager, and then as he transcended into something that has, been an influence in professional wrestling ever since. And if you think about how long ECW was around, it's amazing to me how much of an influence it continues to bring into the wrestling world with ECW. And I'm going to tell you a quick story. I'm not going to bore you to tears with this, but this is, as a wrestling old head, this means a lot to me. Paul Heyman is in my top 5 influences as a wrestling fan for a big reason. I was a kid and I had gotten a Daewoo computer in 1997. And on top of reading Pro Wrestling Illustrated magazine when my mom would get it when we'd go to the grocery store, ECW was this thing that I would see, and it was always on the cover of the magazines. And you would see like Tommy Dreamer with Beulah and Kimono Wanalea, and you'd see the Sandman with a cigarette in his mouth, and you'd see guys like Taz, and then guys that I was familiar with, like Shane Douglas, who's now jacked, who I remember when the WWF, he was just this pretty boy that had long hair and orange, cream, sickle type tights, and didn't really have much of a personality, but now he looks badass and he's jacked. He's got Bam Bam Bigelow and Chris Candido next to him, and I'm like, what company is this? Where did this come from? And of course, luminaries like Terry Funk and Cactus Jack. So it always looked like it was too extreme. It always looked like it was too intense for me at the time. Like as a kid, I was like, wow, this is a lot. But then they showed up on WWF TV on Raw, and I watched some of the matches, and Sabu came off the top of the Raw sign, off the R, on the security, and Taz was choking people out, and Stevie Richards and the Blue Meanie were doing their NWO rendition called the Blue World Order, and I was like, whoa, I was blown away. I wanted more. I was addicted. And I would go in and on Wrestling Grandstand Sports on AOL, I would find these clips, and it would be like Joey Styles going like, "Oh my God, a total elimination!" And here comes Mikey to save the day. And I was like hearing it, and the crowd sounded raucous, but I didn't have enough bandwidth to like look at the videos, because those videos back in the AOL days, talking about 28.8 like production speed. It was like, I mean, it would take me 3 or 4 days to download a 5-minute clip or something, because we had dial up. And so I wanted more. And then I heard that they were going to have their first ECW pay-per-view, and we didn't have enough money to buy it, but I ended up getting into tape trading, and there was this guy from Vegas that had taped it, and he was selling the tape on eBay, and I made a purchase for it, and my mom was cool enough to allow me to buy it, and I remember I got the tape, and I just kept watching it over and over and over again. It was something about the format. It was something about the layout that I was just in love with. There were guys that I had never been familiarized with, but that were so cool to me, like Rob Van Dam, who looked a lot like Jean-Claude Van Damme, and I was like, maybe he's his cousin or something. And there was Chris Candido, who I remember to Skip from the Body Donnas. And there was, like I said, there was Bam Bam Bigelow, who I don't think was around at ECW Barely Legal, but came around later on. And Rick Rude. It was like a throwback. Like some people I was familiar with, some people I didn't know. And I was just so in awe of it. And then I went down the rabbit hole after that, and I started getting more into RF video, and I started to buy the pay-per-views. And it was Joey Styles with his enigmatic sound. He oozed of this like charisma, but just this well-studied opinion and well-studied a verse of wrestling. Like he knew the moves, he knew the background, and it was just him. And I was in awe of that. And The matches were great. The layout was great. Some of the storylines I was just enthralled in. And I think I've mentioned it before, the Pitbull #1 and Shane Douglas storyline. I was really into that at the time because he looked like he was going to cause a riot. And I wasn't really around for the Memphis days. I wasn't really around for UWF and all that. Like, although I did go and watch those, it didn't really it impacted me, but I really wasn't around for that. I was a WWF fan. I was Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior. Like, I was bought into that. And WCW came later. And then ECW was like that bridge between like the Mid-South and, the Crockett promotions, and then, USWA, like that stuff. And then going into WWF, I got a bridge and I got to find a liking to that style, old school style of professional wrestling. And then they used real music. So, ECW introduced me to Alice in Chains. ECW introduced me to White Zombie. ECW introduced me to Metallica. ECW introduced me to the Butthole Surfers. Okay, I would buy the CDs and I would go home and I would play these CDs and I would learn about this music from looking at clips and from watching ECW. Paul Heyman, man, going from a photographer for, I think it was Rolling Stone, to being this just visionary for professional wrestling was just so inspiring. And I say all that to say, and I don't want to be here too much longer on that, but I do say that to say that Paul Heyman deserved the Hall of Fame. Paul Heyman deserves his flowers. And I hope one day Paul Heyman can see this or hear this video. And I'm sure he doesn't need just this video, but just to know that he made a fan of professional wrestling out of me that was deeper than the Hulk Hogans, deeper than the Bret Harts, deeper than the Ultimate Warriors. He made me a fan, and he got me invested in storylines and in the emotion of the development of wrestling characters, wrestling performers. So for the guys like Paul Heyman, for the guys like Jim Cornette, for the guys like Eric Bischoff even, which I know I'm going to get heat for that, but in his own way he did it. For the guys, for the McMahons, thank you. But more importantly to Paul Heyman, thank you. You made me a fan. You got me interested in wrestling. I can hear you talk about wrestling forever. You have a way with words. You have a way of speaking to the public and getting them to be emotionally invested. You taught me words that I never even knew existed, like antiquated and draconian. You made me a fan of wrestling, but more importantly, you made me a fan of you, sir. And to you, I thank you. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I am always going to give you your flowers. There is no wrong you can do, sir. And you have made me fans of guys. You have made me fans of Brock Lesnar, of Roman Reigns. I was already a fan of CM Punk, but you made me a WWF version of CM Punk fan, okay? You have done it. You. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. From one wrestling fan, and I know you're a wrestling fan yourself. So if you ever get a chance to listen to this, which I'm sure you won't, just know that I'm a fan, sir, and I'm appreciative of you for being in the wrestling world, and I'm appreciative of you for winning the WWE Hall of Fame. You earned it, man. You deserve it. And for any Paul Heyman fans out there, I champion you. And for any CM Punk fans out there, I champion you. And this is to a cheers to a great wrestling weekend ahead of us for WrestleMania. I'm so jacked, so pumped for that. Stay tuned for my review of that. Wrestling fans, you stay united. This wrestling old head is grinning from ear to ear, and I'm about to go watch some more ECW. How about you? You deserve it, Paul.